European nations explore the world, the age of exploration. If you look at this map, you can see some of the main players in European exploration and where they sailed, in addition to the names of the explorers who sailed for those countries. Portugal is represented in green, and you can see that they sailed primarily down the coast of Africa, around the tip of Africa and to India, although they do have some exploration coming towards South America. Spain is in the reddish color. You can see where their exploration routes were. France is represented by purple and England by yellow. So this gives you a good idea of which countries were exploring and which locations. Portugal's exploration was led by a man named Prince Henry, who sponsored trips and opened a school of navigation to teach people how the skills they needed to become explorers. The goal for the Portuguese exploration was to find a southern route around Africa so that they could reach India and China. Their motivation was control of trade, particularly in the spices, and the outcome was that they established trading posts in India, China, and South America, trading posts rather than colonies where Portuguese people were going to settle and live. For the Spanish, exploration was led by the monarchy and private investors who contributed money to fund the trips. Their goal, similar to the Portuguese, was to find trade routes to India. The Spanish focused more on transatlantic voyages that led them to North and South America. So literally what they were trying to do was to find a western route to India, since the Portuguese had pretty much pioneered the southern route around Africa. Their motivation was a search for gold and silver as well as other resources, and the outcomes of Spanish exploration included the idea that they built an empire that was based both on military power and on Catholic missions. It was a goal of the Spanish to send missionaries to teach the indigenous people the Catholic religion. They also used indigenous people as forced labor on the farms that were established in their settlements, and they intermarried with the native or indigenous women so that the mestizo race, a new ethnic group of people, was created in Central and South America. For the Netherlands, who aren't depicted on the map that we looked at the beginning of the video, the goal remains largely the same: to sail to India and North America looking for new trade routes. Their motivation was they wanted to compete with the other countries for trade routes and resources, and the outcome is that they established trading companies and colonies in the places that they explored. The English were one of the later countries to get into the exploration game, so to speak. They were also led by monarchs and wealthy individuals. Their goal, similar to the Spanish, was to find a western route to India. The English particularly were looking for something called the Northwest Passage. It was a waterway that would take them completely across North America, traveling east to west, and allow them to access the Pacific Ocean. They don't realize at the time that they're going to have to go all the way around South America. Their motivation is to compete with these other nations for trade routes, colonies, and resources. Outcomes are they do eventually sail to India, but they also establish another number of colonies in North America, and they established investment companies called joint stock companies to fund these colonies and exploration efforts. Finally, we'll talk about the French. Again, still looking for a western route to India, and to some extent that Northwest Passage, the waterway through North America. They also wanted to compete with other nations for trade routes and colonies, and the outcomes for the French are that they established trading posts and more limited settlements in the North America and the Caribbean. The French didn't have as many people come to live in settlements as the English or even the Spanish did. The overall impacts of this exploration for the purpose of this video are an increased competition for land and resources among these European nations. In fact, the competition was such that sometimes there had to be legal intervention. For example, the line of demarcation was drawn to show which territory in South America belonged to Portugal and which belonged to Spain. Literally, they took a map and drew a line down a line of longitude on the map. Everything to the west of that line belonged to Spain. Everything to the east of that line belonged to Portugal. And that's actually why Portuguese is the language of Brazil today, because once the line was drawn as part of the Treaty of Tordesillas, the area that is today known as Brazil was in the Portuguese area of influence. We also see the development of this idea of mercantilism as a primary economic philosophy. I'll explain more about what that means and how it works in class. And countries developed a desire for a favorable balance of trade. Literally, they were looking for the value of their exports to be greater than the value of their imports. That's one of the primary tenets of this idea of mercantilism that we'll talk about more in class. If you need to rewind or rewatch any portion of this video, please feel free to do so. Thanks for listening.